Naveen, excellent session again. It was very nice session. And it's an extension of yesterday what we were talking about the future of work. I think yesterday another McKinsey speaker talked about it, Mr. Joseph. I think it was extension of that. There this word first appeared, ESG, and then I think we got a full understanding of ESG today. That's very good. I think there are few questions from the audience. And let me ask those questions. If a company wants to start an ESG in their premises, what parameters to look at and how to prioritize?
Sure. Let's take a few metrics that are very easy, somewhat easy to measure, some are harder. The first is carbon and emissions, right? So carbon emissions, NOx, SOx, typically it's measured. Even if you don't measure it on a kind of actual basis, you'll have an OEM prescribed number. You kind of add it up. So there is a general emissions. You'll definitely look at water. In essence, how much water do you consume versus how much water you let out? So the kind of a fresh water withdrawal intensity, but also the net water consumption, right? So that is an important dimension to look at. You look at waste, and every chemical process is a bit different. So, what do you do with waste treatment? So very standard metrics on E, you should know. S tends to be a little different because S is very...
means you take a effluent generated, something like that? Or
yes, exactly.
Generated or whatever.
Exactly. Effluent generated, effluents treated. Again, the very standard metrics. The good news about ESG is everything is published, right? So you go to some standard sites, the sites that do the ratings, and you will find enough and more ratings. The data is not the issue, or the information not the issue. What becomes a challenge is it adds a big burden to an organization that's already, everybody's working hard, right? So then to say, okay, we're going to do more reporting becomes the challenge, and getting the data I found is often the challenge. But at least there I would start. The E is reasonably well understood. In S, it is really around diversity and inclusion, health and safety. Safety, for example, looking at TRIFR, right? Recordable injuries, frequency rate, looking at lost time to injury, LTI, those types of measures for safety. But also looking at employee satisfaction. So typically, for example, if someone is looking at your company outside in, how will they know if your employees are satisfied or not? They will go to websites like Glassdoor, which give a rating, because everybody can go and give a rating. So there are some things like that that are reasonably well understood as outside in metrics. I would start with these. And look at that. And in governance, look at board composition, level of non-executive directors, independent non-executive directors on the board, for example, level of diversity on the board, level of ESG transparency. Do you have a net zero commitment? So reasonably well understood set of metrics. Again, I'm happy to share this with IPA. You can share this with your members as well on what this set of metrics would look like.
Sure. Second question is, who should oversee this particular activity, ESG? Who are the people? They are EHS people or operation people, or we create a separate body for this to monitor this?
Excellent question, Shirish, because now this is becoming a very important theme, at least at the BU level, right? The operating unit level. Nowadays, what we are seeing is that there is either an EHS person under which some other activities are collated, or they are forming this new group called the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer. It's become a new role, right? And it was in some organizations, it's become more prevailing because of how broad this subject is. Everything comes within the subject, right? E comes, S comes, G comes. There's nothing which is so. Therefore, more and more organizations are creating the CSO type structure, Chief Sustainability Officer. But it's not for everyone. You can easily do this well because somebody is looking at all this right now, right? EHS is looking at environment, health, and safety right now. You have HR that is looking at employee satisfaction and so on. You have a CFO who is looking at risk. And it's not like people aren't looking at this, but if you want a specific focus, it is sometimes helpful to put this under a certain one person like a CSO. And whether over time you want this person or whether you want to dismantle it is your choice. But that's just to create that focus, you may want to do that. The other option is you don't create that central role, but make sure the KPIs are set. So understand the E, S, and G dimensions, break it and give it to the right people, right? So that they do what is required.
That's good. Thank you. There is one more question. Have companies started incorporating the ESG agenda in board meetings? or is it still a buzzword or an actionable agenda for the global leaders?
No, it's again a very good question. So boards are, if I look at the spectrum of companies that I'm working for, at the best practice end of the spectrum, there is a board subcommittee on sustainability. That board subcommittee meets like any of the other subcommittees, like an audit or a remuneration committee, and has the kind of mandate to look at the sustainability performance of the organization. And that board subcommittee will meet, will look at the annual sustainability report, will have questions of the management team, etc. So that's at one end. Somewhere in the middle is the overall board. Full board looks at sustainability as one of the topics, like other topics that come up for the management, and will ask for an update. And at the other end, some boards are still learning on what sustainability is and how they should react to that. I think at the very bare minimum, now every board member is aware that this is a topic that investors are looking at, regulators are looking at, shareholders are looking at, employees are looking at. So they're at least asking the question, okay, what is sustainability? What should we do about it?
I think another interesting question is what demand generation activities can be undertaken to motivate companies to adopt ESG practices and develop the ecosystem? How do you make it happen? That's what the question is.
So, Shirish,
what type of incentive?
Yeah, it's a good question because typically the incentive that has worked globally is regulatory pressure, right? So where this has happened, where if you almost correlate when a company has taken a net zero target and a net zero target that is then they will say, okay, how do I implement the net zero target? They'll put some regulations. It kind of comes down. So typically companies have taken oh, we have to do this, so we'll do it. Because one chart I didn't cover in this is sustainability has some cost, right? Because there is a cost of stranded asset if I switch from my existing fossil fuel power to renewable power. Whatever I do, not everything will be free of cost in that sense. So there is a certain cost associated with this. So that's a good question. And in fact, that is a question that a lot of us are thinking about, right? How do we incentivize companies to do the right thing? And I think part of that will come from regulatory pressure. Part of that will come from, I think, customers demanding this more. And especially in the pharma space, where I think equity matters and making sure that in a society like ours, access to care and healthcare medicines is available for all at the right price. I think that will genuinely become a driving force for this, right? So I think this is the right group, if any group, to be motivated to do the right thing.
I think suggestion was if this cost can be allocated in the CSR activity which company takes, then also it will be.
It's a good question, but Shirish, actually a couple of days ago in the Economic Times, it was reported that now CSR, there will be a stronger focus on where the CSR money is going, which is also good. Better disclosures, etc. on CSR. Probably the 2%, that may be one of the areas that you can put into this. Absolutely.
Thank you, Naveen. It generated a lot of it and a lot of questions are being asked. We will send those questions because we are now, time is short now. We have to close the session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.